Hi everyone, welcome to the first Server Tribe Attune webinar for 2021. Thanks for joining us. The webinar will run for around 30 minutes and will consist of introduction, indicative case study, showing some problems a real client needed to manage, which were a hindrance to a major systems integration project following a business merger, as well as some positive outcomes and feedback following deployment of Attune. We'll finish with a demo of how to rapidly automate server builds using Attune. There will be the opportunity to ask questions in the chat window, and we'll cover those following the demo. We'll also be adding a couple of our own poll questions, which if you'd be kind enough to answer those for us. So the Attune solution has evolved over the last 6 years and has been in use at clients internationally. Its functions are designed to enable users to deliver projects faster and with confidence. Essentially, it enables the move away from manually performing server work to automating almost any server task, from small one-line fixes to entire server builds. Its many functions provide a robust automation solution, enabling users to start and finish projects quickly, centralize, capture and share knowledge, saving organizations time and money. Today's presentation is being delivered by Jarrod, Chesney, CEO of Server Tribe. Jarrod has been involved in the design and development of Attune since its inception, and I'll now hand over to Jarrod to carry on with the webinar.
Great. Thanks, Steve. I'll carry on with the webinar. Hello, everyone. I'm Jarrod Chesney. I'll give you a bit of background as to why I'm here and talking to you about automation. So I've spent the first 10 years of my career working with a large utility, and I was, amongst other things, I was a sysadmin of their control system for the power grid. About that time, I wanted a new challenge, and I went out to start my own company, and the team and I did the same thing for other utilities. We went and built control systems across Australia and New Zealand, and we dealt with their unique teams, which I was familiar with because I used to be one of them. In this problem space, we wanted to bring in automation and do things better. So the team have always had a mission of making things easier, making things better, making computers work for us, and to make things easy. You can see by our slogan, Server Tribe slogan, we want to make sysops easy. That's our goal. So there was nothing on the market that would solve the problem of automation that we needed for the teams that we were dealing with and the automation that we had. We needed something that was interactive, something that didn't lock away knowledge, and something that was easy to use. And that's why we decided to develop Attune. And here we are now. All right, let's get into the case study. The case study, there was the case study for the project that we're going to talk about. It was a merger between two major organizations. It was $1 billion program of works, because if you can imagine two organizations merging all of their IT systems, have a GIS, they've got payroll, they've got finance, they've got works management, all of these systems need to be merged. So it's a large program of works to do all of this. They need to unify the systems for long-term cost reduction. The project we were working on was the critical path, and it was a server upgrade project of their control system. The progress had stalled on their project as they were trying to use internal resources. We also had obligations for BAU, and it was costing them $250,000 a day in consultants. So let's talk about the case study. Let's talk about the environment complexity. There was two power grid. There was a control system. It was a control system upgrade project. They were allowed at most 2 minutes of outage, which made it even more complicated. We had to deal with physical servers. The physical servers needed to be rebuilt in place during the upgrade, which made it a complex upgrade process. And we had a complex rollback process where after they had rebuilt the servers, if they wanted to go back, they would have to put the old images on. And we automated all of that work, including rebuilding a server, rebooting it into a live environment, restoring all the file systems from the old image, and then booting it back up again into its normal operating mode. They have about 30 servers in their production environment, and there's about 7 unique server types. Now, this slide will give you some contrast between what was before Attune and what came once we got on board with Attune. So they were running their project for 12 months before they brought us on board to help. They still hadn't built a UAT environment. They had a heavily scripted process. So they had been developing automation themselves with scripts over the years they've had a system. They had no full stack rebuilds yet, and they had manual run sheets, which when you looked at them, they required a lot of implicit knowledge from the sysadmin team. You couldn't just take this run sheet, give it to someone and have them run it. So let's contrast that to where they were after we finished the project with Attune. So we achieved UAT in 3 months. So within 3 months, we had built a full automation for a server build with all of their customizations that built it exactly how they wanted it, restored their data, installed the operating system, everything. They had an automated cutover and rollback procedures. So when they were running the upgrade, they were watching progress bars for most of the time. They could build a full server. The core servers were quite intense. The full server stack rebuild took 3.5 hours versus weeks or months if they were doing it by hand in amongst their ordinary support duties. And they ended up with a fully documented build procedure. So once we had completed the automation, it was all the knowledge was captured, and they knew exactly how to build their service, because with automation, you need to know this to do it. All right, let's move on to the demo. So I will demo some features of Attune. I'll just go through and demonstrate them pretty much as per the slide. So let's log into Attune. Attune has a low barrier entry, and I will create you an automated procedure during the demo. This is a reusable procedure of scripts, and part of it's designed like this because Attune can generate documentation as well, which I'll also show you. It also breaks it down into small steps. You can see them in the tree. So if we go to target server, target Linux user, these are variables. They're not the names of actual servers. Here I've already prepared a script where I've just taken it out of one of our existing procedures, and we can paste it into there. So if we already had a scripted process, that's pretty much how easy it is to migrate into Attune. But this step up here, pre-wait for 20 seconds, I don't want that to be part of this script that we're creating. This script here, this will actually log into 2 different servers and check transaction deltas between the replication group in the core servers that we're working with. So I want to move that wait step to its own step in Attune, because I don't always want to run it, or I want to separate it. And I've shortened it down to 4 seconds. It's appeared in the wrong spot, so we can easily just drag that up from there to there. So we've got our script here, minus our wait that we've split out into a separate step. Now let's run this on the server. We have 2 servers that we have 3. We have 2 servers that we can target this procedure on, app 1 and app 2. We will set the users. In here, we're creating a plan, and this is where we map these generic variables into actual server names. If you look here in our original script, this is not a syntax for Bash or SQL. Attune will replace these placeholders with variables on the fly with the ones that I'm filling out here when it runs it on the server. So that's our first plan. And without changing the procedure, we can go to our second procedure, make it run on app 2. And in this one, we will tell it to run on target server, will be app 2. We will use the same user to log in with. There we go. We've got one procedure we've just created. We can run it on 2 different servers now with our variables. So now we create a job. A job is what you would expect. It's the running of something we've created. So let's run it. You can see here it's going to wait for 4 seconds. And then it will continue on to the next step. So if you can see, it's a low barrier of entry of Attune. We've just managed to create this procedure and put our script in here. This can be commands exactly as you would type in by hand. For example, if we wanted to type command in by hand of ls, we can do that. That's exactly what we would type into the terminal if you wanted to see the output. Well, this could be remove file, change file, add file. That's the low barrier of entry. How easily it is to migrate scripts into Attune, like copying and pasting them, pretty much. We've got easy script reuse, which is with these Attune variables and creating the plan. Now let's go into rapidly debugging the procedure. So let's put in a failure here. We'll run it against the same variables. So this step worked. We'll run the command false, which is a fail. It will fail with a bad exit code. Attune actually sets a flag in every script it runs. So if any command in this script fails, it will stop at that point. So we won't get to run this echo command here, but let's see. Echo fail. Let's create a new job because we've changed the steps. Now we can see the job here. It's also interesting to note that when you create a new job, the old one is archived, and you can see the time it took, as well as the log against the step from before. We've created a new job. Now let's run it from the top. Pre-rating 4 seconds. Because Attune's running this the second time, it knew how long it took, and you can make the progress bars work. So this step failed, but like I said, we can rapidly debug this automation. Imagine if we were 2 hours into that 3.5-hour procedure that I was talking about and it failed. We can fix this and we can carry on if it's. So we fixed it. We can run this step again itself, and now it's succeeded. This worked, that's both of them. And then we can even click on the next step in the job and keep running it. So this feature in Attune is rather unique. It was designed to be interactive. It's interactive automation, which means you can work with it like this. And you can see that last step I added where it ran ls. All right, now, even if you've got the best documentation created that contains every step that you need to run to build a server, you'll still need a Word document or a web page will only get you so far. You still need files from somewhere, whether they're on an NFS share or they're put on a computer you need to copy them across. All that time of taking the file, making sure the file's in place, it's separate. So it's not attached to the documentation, it's in another place. And if you're really good, you can keep your repository up to date, but generally they drift. You'll go through the procedure after 6 months. You'll be like, where's that file? But we don't have that problem with Attune because Attune has built-in archives. For example, let's deploy an Oracle client to this. I have an example Oracle client here that I'm going to drag into the procedure or into Attune. We've just uploaded this file into Attune. Now we've got the Oracle client in it. That's the good thing here is now we've got our automated procedure. We can just deploy this as part of our procedure. We call it demo deploy. We change our step type to we're deploying an archive. Change our OS credential, change our server, put it in /temp. Select the Oracle client, the archive we just created, and let's update this step here so we can actually see the files that it's going to deploy. All right, now let's run our job again. Let's run it on app 1 this time. We'll create a new job, which we need to do if we change the steps, and we can run that again from the beginning as well. If I wanted to, I can stop this job. It will finish the current step that has succeeded. I can go down to here if I wanted. Start at the deploy step, run it from there. So you can imagine that during a cutover situation where you can't just afford to fix something and run the whole procedure again, that this sort of interactive automation is really beneficial. If we discover a problem during cutover and we're building 5 servers, then we can stop the procedure at certain points for 4 of the servers and fix it during the cutover process, which obviously is not ideal. but having the ability to do that is very powerful. So you can see that the deployment was complete. It took 19 seconds, extracted the archive, pushed it over, and here is a list of the files. That's not going to let me do it. There we go. So that's how you centralize files. Now I have a second stage of this demo. Documentation, transportable procedures. Like I said at the beginning, Attune was designed to be able to generate documentation for these utilities, for customers that didn't want a black box procedure that locked away knowledge. So what we can do is save the documentation, and Attune will generate it. Then we can look at the documentation. And the reason it's set out in steps is partly so you can generate this documentation if you wanted to. And these are good for when you need to put in change requests, change advisory boards. You can say, here's the steps that we're going to run. And it creates this documentation for you. Initially, with the concept of Attune, we had manual documentation, we had the automation, and we wanted to be able to really meld the two. This is why the tool does both, and it will generate this documentation. So let's talk about reusable procedures. You saw that I put this archive in here for the Oracle client. But if we had a fresh Attune server, we can take this procedure and export it, and you can see there it will include the Oracle archive and any values that we have set as defaults. We can take this out of here that we've just developed, put it into another Attune server and run it there. For example, if you want to develop something in development environment or test environment, and take it to staging or production environment, this is how you would transfer it. And it comes with all of the files that's required and all the scripts to deploy it. For example, if this is an Oracle patch, and you can see that this file is 38 megs. It contains that archive. We also have an example of a Windows procedure. The scripts that I've shown you so far have been running on a Linux server. So while that's uploading, we'll go back to the presentation. Attune is agentless with Linux. If you're using PuTTY and talking to a Linux server, then that's exactly the same way that that Attune talks to the Linux server. It uses SSH. If you're talking to a Windows server, it uses standard Windows protocols as well. So you enable WinRM, which is a standard Windows remote shell protocol, and Attune will talk to Windows servers exactly the same way. So now it's processing that archive that I just sent through. And it's still processing. So you can see in here, this procedure that I prepared earlier has steps for deploying an archive, running a Windows script, deploying another archive. It has the archives, a whole Windows 32-bit client and a configuration file and some variables that were needed to run it. So we can import that, and our procedure is now here. The procedure step I'm going to demonstrate is this template archive. If you look in here, you can see that it's got this syntax for app servers in app service. This is something that Attune will pre-process on the fly, and it will expand this out to every app server in our variable. We'll have a quick look at the values and variables. Variables are generic names. So replication service is a server group of servers that has a name, that's it, and a script reference. And then that will be mapped to value called server group, which says app1 and app2 in it. So let's create our plan. We'll fill out our values. create our plan. Let's create our job. So I'm not going to install all of this because it takes a while to install the Oracle client. But if we just deploy this step here, and we have our Windows machine that I prepared earlier, you can see that we've deployed this file. It deploys to Windows. We can check out this file. You can see that it's expanded this into what we can see on the left, the App Server 1, App Server 2. And this is a really powerful feature for generating configuration files on the fly. You don't have to maintain them. You can create a template and then deploy them for whichever environment you need to be in. And finally, we'll run a Windows step that will just remove that. File be gone. And that's the dynamically generated files part of my presentation, demonstration of Attune. So in summary of the case study, and we came along with Attune, or this case study project. We implemented Attune's 12 months after the project start. They had run it the project for 12 months and then they brought us on board. When we came aboard, the results were we reduced the stress on sysadmins during cutover. We reduced human error during the upgrade. There was knowledge was captured post-project once all the consultants had left. There was a significant reduction in cost and time from the trajectory they were on. We achieved UAT in 3 months with fully automated builds. Achieved go live in 6 months with suitable. There was ample time in there for testing, and there was post go live testing go live process was tested many times. And there was 100% reproducible server builds, and we thoroughly tested the cutover and rollback procedures. My favorite quote from the project: if we had Attune at the start of the project, we'd be sitting back sipping pina coladas. That was said by one of the existing sysops that we worked with when we came on board. Back to you, Steve.
Great. Thanks, Jarrod. So as you can see from the presentation, there's some powerful features. But as Jarrod mentioned earlier in the presentation, the barriers to entry are actually very low. You can get moving very quickly with the Attune product. So that concludes the presentation.